Confirmation of extreme detention conditions broke out on Monday, July the 1st, both by several Congress members and a Homeland Security internal memo, which revealed astonishing details about Border Patrol's detention center, like exhausted children separated from their relatives, having to sleep in concrete floors, overcrowded cells, children in poor medical condition and no access to doctors, a shower, or even toothpaste. This sparked outrage across the country. And on Tuesday the 2nd, there were many protests on the streets.
Close the camps now! Close the camps now! Love, not hate, makes America great! Love, not hate, makes America great!
In Phoenix, Arizona, we spoke to people attending a march outside ICE central office.
I think before Trump was elected, the liberal people, we like to think that the country was swinging our way because most media is pretty liberal. Movies, television, it's usually pretty liberal leaning. But we didn't realize that there was this whole subculture of right-wing conservatives who were watching Fox News and were getting a completely different story from the rest of us and were forming completely different opinions about whether or not human beings deserve the right to live, which is just crazy to liberals. But apparently some 40% of Americans don't think that all people have the right to just survive, which is crazy to me.
Christ never talked against, he was for the immigrant. If we follow Christian values, we should support them, help them, not mock them, not lock them up in cages, separate them, or abuse them mentally, physically.
My great-grandparents came over to Ellis Island. And they were welcomed. And there's no reason for these people not to be able to be welcomed here instead of locked up.
And I want everybody to look at that truck right there, right now, because that's our asylum-seeking families getting processed right now. They're in this building. They will be getting an ankle bracelet to further make them look like criminals. An ankle bracelet that they are not allowed to take off.
The main petition made by the group was for CBP to assign permanent medical staff inside the infamous hieleras, or icebox, as the asylum seekers called Border Patrol's Provisional Detention Centers.
I'm here with you in solidarity to ask ICE to improve, in fact, make perfect the conditions in which we house and care for asylum seekers.
There were many speeches comparing U.S. detention centers to those of Nazi Germany, a particularly sensitive subject to the Jewish community.
The similarities with the Nazis in Germany and what's going on now is striking. It started with hate and fear. The Nazis were preaching hate and fear and divided the people. Just before, in the 30s, early 30s, Hitler came into power, but prior to that, it was a democracy and it was a republic, and people lived together quite nicely, especially with the Jewish people in Germany. My parents were German Jews, and they escaped in the 1930s, the end of the 1930s. The propaganda, the talk, the press, all those things that were going on in Germany in the 30s is going on right here, right now, right in our faces.
I think the more conservative, evangelical, right-wing church forget about the basic human thing that Jesus talked about. He hung out with people who hear and speaking out against the establishment and what is humane and right to do.
Our country sends men and women to fight in other countries for justice, for equality, for better ways of life. But when these people come to our country, we close the door on them and tell them they're not welcome. Then what are we doing in other countries fighting wars if we can't help them when they come to our country? In other words, it's okay for you to die and be abused in your country. Don't come to us. And that's what it seems like they're saying.
Anyone who protested or tried to stop the insanity was arrested, and then the Jews were put into the camps just because they were Jews. So at the end of the war, the labor camps became killing camps, and millions upon millions were killed. Could this
happen here? I say yes.
Stay tuned with the Real News for more on the issue.